The wind howled across the barren plains of Montana as Evelyn Harper clutched the small suitcase that carried everything she owned. Her boots sank into the mud as she was led toward a wagon waiting by the dirt road. Behind her, the small farmhouse where she'd spent her life loomed like a shadow of everything she'd lost. Her father stood on the porch, his expression cold and unreadable. "You'll be better off there," he said, not meeting her eyes. She wanted to believe him, but deep down she knew she wasn't being sent away for her own good. She was being sold. Evelyn had been 25 when the doctor told her she would never bear children. In her small, conservative town, that single truth became her curse. Her fiancé broke off their engagement. Her family called her useless, and whispers followed her everywhere she went. When her father announced that a widowed rancher was looking for a housekeeper and might take her in exchange for a dowry debt, she didn't protest. She'd learned long ago that her voice held no power in that house. The wagon stopped at a vast stretch of open land, golden fields surrounded by mountains that kissed the horizon. A sturdy man in his late 30s stepped down from the porch of a modest ranch house. His name was Thomas Reed, a rancher whose wife had died 2 winters ago. His eyes were steady, not cruel, but full of a quiet sadness Evelyn recognized immediately. He'd lost something too. When her father introduced her, Thomas offered a nod and said softly, "You don't owe me anything, Miss Harper. You can stay as long as you like. There's work, food, and a roof." Evelyn, not trusting kindness from any man, only nodded back. Her father left that afternoon without so much as a goodbye. At first, Evelyn spoke little. She cooked, cleaned, and mended fences in silence, always waiting for the day Thomas would send her away. But he never did. He would simply offer her a warm cup of coffee each morning before heading out to tend the cattle. "You work hard," he told her one evening by the fire. "You don't have to, but you do anyway." "Why?" She hesitated before answering. "Because if I stop working, I'll start thinking," she said quietly. He gave a faint smile. "Then let's make sure there's always enough work for both of us." Days turned into weeks. She began to find peace in the rhythm of the ranch, the creak of the barn door, the smell of fresh hay, the low hum of Thomas humming to his horses. Sometimes, when the loneliness was too much, she would walk to the ridge behind the house, where the sunset bled across the sky. One evening Thomas joined her. "I come here when I miss her," he said softly, eyes fixed on the fading light. "My wife, Anna. She wanted children more than anything." Evelyn lowered her gaze. "Then you must hate me," she murmured. "They call me Barren. That's why my family sold me." Thomas turned to her sharply, a look of disbelief on his face. "Sold you?" She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. He was silent for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his voice was tight with anger, but not at her. "People can be cruel, but you're not property, Evelyn. You're a person. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." That night, she cried quietly in her room for the first time in years, not out of pain, but from the shock of hearing someone defend her. Over the following months, something unspoken began to grow between them. Thomas never pushed her, never treated her as anything less than an equal. They worked side by side, laughed over small things, and shared quiet dinners by the fire. One stormy night, as thunder rolled across the plains, she found herself confessing things she had never dared to say aloud. "My mother used to tell me I was born broken," she whispered, "said no man would ever want me. And when my fiancé left, I thought she was right." Thomas's gaze softened. "You're not broken, Evelyn," he said. "You're the strongest person I've ever met. You keep going no matter how hard life's been. I don't need children to make this place feel alive. I just need you." Those words lodged in her heart like sunlight breaking through a storm. For the first time, she felt seen not for what she could give, but for who she was. Months later, a traveling doctor stopped by the ranch after his wagon wheel broke. He was a kind man who offered to check on Evelyn's old health concerns. She agreed reluctantly, more out of politeness than hope. When he finished, his expression was puzzled. "Who told you you couldn't have children?" he asked. Evelyn blinked. "The town doctor, years ago." He shook his head. He was wrong. "There's nothing preventing you from conceiving. You're healthy as can be." The words hit her like lightning. For years, she had carried the weight of a lie that had cost her everything: her home, her dignity, her hope. Thomas found her standing outside the barn, tears streaming down her face. When she told him what the doctor said, he wrapped his arms around her, but she could feel him smiling against her hair. "Whether that's true or not," he whispered, "I meant what I said. I don't need children, Evelyn. I need you." That night, under the soft glow of lantern light, she realized she had found something. Rarer than acceptance, she had found love born not out of pity, but of respect. Years passed, and the ranch began to flourish again. Evelyn managed the books, cared for the animals, and helped Thomas build a life that was steady and full. One spring morning, As they sat on the porch sipping coffee, she placed his hand on her belly. "Thomas," she said, voice trembling, "I think I'm late." He stared at her for a long moment, then laughed a deep, joyful sound she had never heard before. He lifted her into his arms, spinning her around as the morning sun broke over the hills. "Looks like life still had a few surprises left for us," he said. When their daughter was born, Evelyn looked down at the tiny, fragile miracle in her arms and wept, not because she'd been proven fertile, but because she'd finally learned that love was never about what one could offer, but what one could share. In town, whispers began again. The same people who once called her Barren now told stories of the woman who'd tamed the widowed rancher's grief, who'd turned a forgotten piece of land into a home filled with laughter. But Evelyn no longer cared what they said. She had spent too many years believing she was less than whole. Now she knew better. On a quiet evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and her daughter chased fireflies in the yard, Thomas wrapped his arm around her shoulders and whispered, "Funny, isn't it? I thought I needed children to feel alive. But it was you who brought life back to this place." She smiled, resting her head against him. "And I thought I was unwanted," she said softly. "But maybe I was just waiting for someone who saw me as enough." The wind carried their laughter across the open plains, mingling with the hum of crickets and the soft rustle of grass. The same land that had once felt empty now pulsed with life and warmth, a testament to the power of love that asks for nothing in return. Evelyn often thought about that day when she arrived, broken and unwanted, sold like a thing. But now she knew that sometimes life takes us through darkness not to destroy us, but to lead us toward the hands that will help us heal. And when she tucked her daughter into bed that night, she whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude for the rancher who had seen her worth, for the second chance she never thought she'd have, and for the truth that love, when it's real, doesn't demand perfection. It simply says, "You are enough."